All right, so in this video, we're going to start what is chapter 15. And this is going to be our first real in-depth look at India and the Indian Ocean basin. So just to kind of give you an idea of what we're looking at, so here is a map of what we're going to be looking at for the next few videos. So India here is right there in the middle of the Indian Ocean. But we're going to kind of be talking about this whole area that surrounds the Indian Ocean. So today we're mostly going to be looking at India and the introduction of Islam into India. But as we continue, we're going to be looking at the kind of central role that India and Indian society has in this area. So we're going to see the various effects that India has on the societies of the Indian Ocean basin, most particularly over here in Southeast Asia. But we'll also see some influence of India over here on the African coast as well. So just to give you an idea of where we're looking at, this is the Indian Ocean, and India here in the middle of it is where we're going to be spending today. So we haven't really spent a lot of time looking at the politics or the political situation in India, mostly because it's very fragmented and there haven't been a lot of long-term successful empires. And as we move from time period 2 into time period 3, we see this same kind of disunity in India. So at the beginning of time period 3, so time period 3 being this post-classical area, India is still fragmented and disunified. So there aren't a whole lot of successful attempts to put India together under one rule, like we've seen in the Islamic world or in China. We just don't see it here in India. There were a few attempts to kind of put India together, but like we've said in the past, these are short-lived attempts. But just to give you one example of someone who tried to do this, towards the beginning of time period 3, a guy named Harsha attempted to put India together. Harsha was a Buddhist leader. He was a good soldier, so he had good military skills. He was also interested in the arts and in culture and education. And for a time, Harsha did manage to put together a big part of North and Central India. But like many rulers before Harsha, Harsha was a charismatic leader. People wanted to follow Harsha. And after his death, his political unit fell apart. So it just kind of disintegrates. So Harsha was able to do this, but without Harsha kind of keeping everyone together, India once again fell into disunity. Now, one other reason that I bring up Harsha is that Harsha kind of serves as the high point for Buddhism in India. After Harsha, Buddhism is going to essentially take a nosedive and eventually be kind of eliminated from Indian society. Or if not eliminated, then marginalized. It's definitely not a major Indian religion now. And we're going to see that over the course of today's video. Buddhism is going to be replaced by Islam. So Buddhism is replaced in India by Islam. Remember, Buddhism will move on. So Buddhism survives in China and Southeast Asia. But it's replaced in India by Islam. So Islam reaches India 3 different ways. And the diversity of ways that Islam gets to India, I think, helps to explain why Islam becomes so popular in India. So the first way comes through military conquest. The first way comes through military conquest. The Umayyads, the Umayyad Caliphate, conquered what's known as Sindh, which is really northwest India and parts of Pakistan, in the 700s, so in 711. So that's one way. Now, this area was really far away from the Umayyad capital in Damascus. So that kind of meant that this part of India, so Islamic India, pretty much ruled itself more or less independently. It's just so far away from the people who make orders that, they're basically doing their own thing. Now, technically, they are still part of the Islamic world, and they're still part of the Islamic world up until the Abbasid Caliphate collapses in 1258. But they're so far away from the rest of the Islamic world, from the center of the Islamic world, that they're basically doing their own thing. So that's something we want to keep in mind when we think about Islamic India. Another way that Islam reaches India is through trade. And so this, we're kind of thinking about coastal India and southern India. So basically, Islamic merchants traded in Indian port cities, and some settled there. and gradually just became part of the society. The same way that any immigrants become part of a society. They intermarry, they become part of the community, and they serve an economic purpose. So, just like any other immigrant in any other society, Islamic merchants settled down in Indian port cities and just became part of the community. Now, eventually, uh, they are kind of taken in by the caste system because the caste system is too ingrained in Indian society for anyone to survive outside of it for too long. So eventually, the Muslims, even if they didn't want to be part of the caste system, uh, are indirectly affected by it. And then finally, the last way we see this is through the migrations and invasions of Turkic people. This is going to be mostly in northern and northeastern India. And a lot of these people are simply migrating. So some of these people are just nomadic people. Migrating normally, just like they normally would. Some of these people are part of mercenary military forces. Invading India. And we've mentioned people like this before. We've mentioned the Uyghurs who were hired by the Chinese. So it's not unlikely that you would see Turkic people who are Muslims hired by, you know, a general with some money who wants to go invading places. So one guy that we might want to remember, one of these military leaders, his name was Mahmud of Ghazni. Ghazni is in modern Afghanistan. So Mahmud of Ghazni was a complicated figure. He was uh, he was an educated man. He was educated, but he also was kind of a ruthless military leader. And he invades India in order to plunder it. The kind of disunified nature of India made it easy to invade. There's not a unified defense, and so it's easy to kind of pick off little pieces of India at a time because they're not all working together. And this is what's going to be seen in India mostly until the British show up and the British kind of unify India themselves. It does kind of also explain why it was so easy for the British to take over India. They were able to just kind of negotiate with pieces of India at a time, negotiate with some, conquer others, so it makes it pretty easy to invade. Mahmud of Ghazni is really no different. He's just doing it before the British show up. Mahmud was Islamic, and he destroyed Hindu and Buddhist temples as he went, and built mosques out of the rubble. So there are pictures of mosques that were built by Mahmud of Ghazni, and you can see that there are pieces of these Hindu or Buddhist temples in them. So he's replacing the Hindu and Buddhist stuff with Islamic mosques. And this is one of the reasons why Buddhism kind of is on the way out, because it's under attack from both the Hindus and the Muslims. Now, around the end of time period 3, we start to see more of a unified Indian government centered around Islamic government. And so we get the first real unified Indian government, and it's called the Sultanate of Delhi. So to start, so the Sultanate of Delhi lasts from 1206 to 1526. So Turkic people invade India again. So it's kind of a constant thing. Mahmud was just one of many Turkic people that invade India. And these people settle around the northern Indian city of Delhi. And in Delhi, Delhi kind of becomes an Islamic city. So it's got mosques and other Islamic cultural things. The problem, though, is that the Sultanate of Delhi was surrounded by Hindu people. So you've got this island of Muslims surrounded by hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of Hindu people. And so what ends up having to happen is that the Sultanate of Delhi is kind of forced to cooperate with the Hindu people of India. neither side is really able to do anything without the support of the other. So if the government of the Sultanate of Delhi wants to do something outside of Delhi, like collect taxes or raise an army, then they need to do those things with the cooperation of the Hindu people. And if the Hindu people want something from the government in Delhi, well, it has to be acceptable to them. And so what you get is a really nice kind of set of compromises. You get compromises that lead to a level of stability. Like, neither side is really happy that the other is there, but they do seem to work well enough to stay in power. Now, the other thing we've got to keep in mind is that this is also a very decentralized government. Basically, as long as the Hindus don't rebel, the Sultanate lets them do as they please. Oh, and we should probably mention what a sultanate is. A sultanate is really no different than a kingdom or an empire or a caliphate. A sultanate is just a government run by a sultan. For our purposes, there's not a whole lot of difference between a sultanate and a kingdom or a caliphate. So it's just a form of government with a different type of king. In this case, it's a sultanate. It's a sultan running it instead of a king. We don't really need to go into the details of why they're different, but that's just what a sultanate is. Okay, so we're going to stop there. In the next video, we're going to take a look at southern India, because southern India is even more decentralized than anything we've seen in northern India. And then we're going to take a look at some of the social and economic characteristics of India, and these are the things that in later videos we'll see spread from India. Until then, this is Mr. Nissen signing off.